And thank you for the invitation. Yes, I'm Paul from Denmark, and I've called my presentation this A New Career and Pre-Retirement Workshops. And in fact, this is my biking route from where I live to the city center of Aarhus. I'm glad it's not Euston Road, and I don't imagine that people dare to go biking on Euston Road, but you can also see this is a senior trying to find his own way in a period of transition here from night to day, and sometimes it's very difficult to find his own way. So that's in fact what a pre-retirement workshop is assisting people with. I have a small company I call a third career, which means a career in the third age, and I make workshops, presentations, especially for senior experienced employees and also for companies. And I think we all have a picture of what a career in the third age is. After you've been working 30, 40, 50 years, now you have really deserved to relax. Smoke a cigar, doing nothing for the rest of your life, and you might have seen this picture from Havana, Cuba before. But a closer look reveals, however, that she's hardworking. She has started her own business in the tourist trade, selling pictures to tourists from the United States and cigars, homemade cigars. There's no point on this, it doesn't matter. So in the same picture, we can in fact see two different stories on what's going on in the many years we have got after last day on the job. So it might, you might say that we are in a paradigm shift of retirement patterns. We see a lot of new ways going on, and a lot of people like this woman wants to continue working and be a part of the game instead of just watching at the sideline, as you can get the imagination when you are pensioned. And people want also meaningful commitments beside all the leisure time they've got, to be a part of the entire life. And you might call it an encore career or a third career, just instead of leisure for 30 years. So that's what we're going to talk about. I have three things. We're living longer, we all know that. I think it's important also to be aware that it's not only many more years we've got, but we have got a quite new life phase. And there I refer to Peter Laslett from Cambridge, who was the first to express this new life phase in his book, A Fresh Map of Life from '79, so many years ago. The second thing is the difficult transition from when you stop working. And the third thing is about my pre-retirement workshops. I call them a shortcut to active aging. And Karen asked me to put some questions. I will finish my presentation with questions we can have for the debate. You can find my presentation at my homepage. In tre karriere, as it's called in Danish.dk, there's a short English version of that homepage. We all know this kind of graph. This is one of them, that life expectancy is increasing with 2 to 3 months per year. A bit more for men than women. And it's because men, we are just having a healthier lifestyle than women. Isn't it correct? We don't drink so many pints and don't smoke so many cigarettes as women. We're fond of salad and things like that. No, we're behind, as you can see here, the male is the blue line and female the red. But that's what we all know. But what we're not so much aware of that this new life phase. And to illustrate what I mean, we can all know these three main phases in life: child, adult, and old. And 100 years ago, your parents, or even your grandparents, they didn't know anything about this life phase, to be young. They just went from their family to another farm and start working at 10, 12 years. At 14 years, so it was in Denmark, They just went one day from child to become an adult. So young didn't exist 100 years ago. Today it's visible. It appears a lot in the culture, and so it's not invisible anymore. But now 100 years later, in the beginning of this century, we're beginning to be aware of a new phase in life. Some people call them young old. Senior is much used, and 60 plus is used. Some people also call them living dead. But we don't have a name for this life phase, and that's a problem. It means that we don't have a concept to conceive the reality of what's really happening. So I've tried to call it full grown now, and that's also a way to illustrate, but in a way we are much more aware in my age and in your age as well of what is right and what is wrong in the world. So in a way we are more mature, we are full grown. Another way to illustrate what I mean with this new life phase is to compare the development in life expectancy from 1900 to 2000. This is figures from Denmark, but I think it's very similar to what's going on in Denmark. In Denmark, it was around 52 years, 100 years ago, the life expectancy. And then, 100 years later, we had just got exactly 25 years more years to live than every other generation before our time. So it is relevant to say that we have got this 25 years life bonus in the third age, in a new life phase that we didn't have before. In Denmark, the third age is the expression, it might be Peter Laslet who was the first to invent this expression, but in Denmark it covers the whole range of years from 60 to 100, or yes, now I have written 122, but you might know Jean Calment from France, who died 15, 20 years ago. She was the oldest woman ever lived. And she was also a very funny woman. She said when she turned 100, now it's time to do something for your health, I better stop smoking. And she also said, I just have one wrinkle on my whole body, and I'm sitting on that. So she was a woman with a lot of humor, and it might be one of the reasons that she lived so long. But Peter Laslet, in fact, distinguished between the third age and the fourth age. And that's a way to be more precise on what's happening in the whole lifespan from 60 to 90, 100 years. Where he said that the third age is where you're independent, you're self-reliant, and in the fourth age you're dependent and lack of help. In Denmark we don't have this, we don't see the period from 60 to 100 as two different ages. I don't know if you have this third age and fourth age, but I think it's a way to be more precise on what's happening in the whole lifespan. In fact, he said, Peter Laslet, that the third age could be culmination in life. It could be the period in life where you have the most important contribution to society. So it's another way of looking at aging than the normal way that it's just going down. It's loss of everything. Just to illustrate, this is a picture of people in the third age, and these nice women, they really need some assistance, and assistance from other, and maybe also lack of help. Sometimes when part of that it's so difficult to realize this new life phase is that we don't have a word accepted by everyone, and that when we mirror ourselves in the newspapers, in the media, it's difficult to get images of people in the third age, independent, self-reliant, in the best period of life maybe. Because newspapers, when they get the assignment, make a drawing of elderly people. They always make people in the fourth age. For example, this person you might know, 3 years ago, they all released a new album. Paul McCartney, Elton John, Paul McCartney. It was the same year that he was preparing his event on the Olympic Games in London. And people, they are not in the fourth age. But when newspapers have to, they are told, please make a drawing of an older person. It's always in the fourth age. So it is dangerous to read newspapers because we think that we're older than we in fact are. I don't know if you use the expression in England that 60 is the new 40. Yes, you have heard of it. Because people, when they arrive at 60, they feel, oh, I didn't think that 60 would be so fine and fit as I am today. So I feel it's more like 40 years. I heard one said that 58 is 85. 85 is the same as 55 today. So we have another feeling of growing older than all the images of it, and that's why it's important to get new concepts. So I think this is a drawing made from United States. It illustrates again that you have the first age, learning and preparation, the second age, work and achievement, and the old perspective is status quo to decline. Oh, I thought there stood deadline, but it is decline, but that's the normal way, and it's also a part of realistic because there are a lot of losses during lifetime. But the new perspective is drawn as age of fulfillment with renewal and growth. And though it's an American way to market what's happening in this new life phase, then it illustrates a bit that it's not only losses what's happening during the life phase, but it's also renewal and growth. So I think we are with the assistance of Peter Laslett as well assisted that we be aware of it's not only a loss and decline during the aging process, but the new life phase as full grown is maybe the most important part of our lives. So end of working like a difficult life transition. This is one way to illustrate it, that this woman, just all the considerations you have when you are trying to decide when am I going to stop at my job. I've just tried to illustrate it because one of the considerations is, so I'm happy, I don't want to stop. That's some people have it in this way. Then she hears that my company needs to cut down expenses. And at 60 years old, she's saying, well, I'll be fired. If it's so, I'd better go before I get fired. I will go by my own will and not if they want. So that's one of her considerations. To leave her colleagues is most important for people. What really makes them happy to go and work is that they are going to meet their colleagues. And say goodbye is very difficult. As a woman, she has also heard my daughter needs me to take care of the grandchildren. I think some women have heard that expression, more or less clear. And it's a part of their considerations, yes, maybe I should do that. So she could also say, I wonder if they can manage without me. On the other hand, a long, long holiday, that would be fine. Everyone on the job could like a long holiday. The economic system situation, what the retirement pension, can I afford living for that? And time to repair the house. I think when you have been to a reception for a person who's going to retire, he is often asked, what are you going to do tomorrow? Oh, I have a long list of things I have to do. It takes half a year and then there are 24 and a half years left. But it's a part of it that you just push things you have to do to the last day. women statistically marry a man 4.5 years older than themselves. So very often the husband has retired, and women, they have to consider, do I have to go together with him, or shall I follow my own way? So another consideration, she's far too old. Two younger colleagues said that behind her back. It was not supposed that she was going to hear it, but a kind of mobbing, I don't know what it's called in English, but a kind of... bullying. Okay. You can also be that on a working place. Maybe I cannot walk up the stairs anymore because you have this old conception of growing old. So we have to find a smaller house, or shall I join a voluntary group? So just to illustrate that before you decide, you have so many considerations, and it's a very complex decision process. So in fact, you could need some assistance to be more clear and to be more aware what will be the best for me to decide when I'm going to leave, instead of just following the norm, following what people think she might do. When I started all my work on preparing these pre-retirement workshops, one of the reasons is that on my job, it was normal that when people announce, I think I'm going to retire, they got two sentences they had to refer to. The one was, how lucky you are. Now you don't have to work the rest of your life. That's the story. I think you might have told it yourself to some of your colleagues, because when you're working, it looks fine if you're going to have a long holiday. So that's one sentence. The other is, and if you get bored, it's your own fault. You're not smart enough, you're not intelligent. So when you get these two sentences, you're not invited to open dialogue on this very difficult decision process. You're just forced down and say, you have to find out yourself. So you have to just think, I'll miss my colleagues, and of course, an important network, you'll miss it. What am I going to do with this? And how to find ways to do what I'm very good at and I really enjoy. These important questions you have just to think about yourself, because the story is you're lucky, and if you can't find out, it's your own fault. So the other consideration is leisure is okay. I haven't tried 20, 30 years in a row. It might be very difficult. So maybe pretend it's easy, even when it's difficult. You might have heard someone say to you when they have retired 2 or 3 months, say, oh, I don't understand I ever had time to go on my job because I'm so busy. And some people are, but some people also tell themselves and their network, I am smart enough, I can find out, because the story you're told, it's correct. There's not so much openness about the difficulties in going from working life to retirement. So this should just be a man waving goodbye, but you can see it's a man drowning and he's in fact pulling his hand up. And it has something to do with the last line here. In the United States, they have made a survey where they asked people who had been retired for 5 years, when you look back on your whole lifespan, there had been a lot of difficult transitions. Getting married was a difficult. 12% said yes, it was the most difficult transition ever. We understand that, some of us. And getting children, a difficult transition, children leave home and so on. But 41%, the majority, said the most difficult transition in my life was to leave my working life and become a pensioner. So it's another story than this one that most people tell, that it's just to be lucky. And the final slide on this part of the difficult transition, I think that there are two stories on retirement. The one where you look forward to what's happening and to see all what you get, and the other one that you don't look back and see what you lose. And that might be a problem because you first realize what you have lost when you have been retired for 1, 2, 3 months or half a year. I met a carpenter who was fired at 62 years. He was not by his own will, he became a pensioner. But he said 3 months after he was had his last day on the job, I still wake up at 6:30 in the morning, but then there a hell of a time until it's 10:30 p.m. and I can go to bed again. Yes, it can really be a disaster, a shock, especially for men, I think, who put so much of their identity in the working life. So people look forward to see what you get, and of course freedom and 70, 37 or 40 hours for travel and leisure, very fine, nice to think. Partner, taking care of your grandchildren, family, very nice. Hobbies and gardening, nice things. Do-it-yourself projects, maybe can be nice or whatever. But that's what the story, the big story on what's happening after the last day on the job that most people are telling. And people forget to tell the other part of the story, that the identity engagement you had for 40 years is now missing. If the average lifetime is 80 years, then you can say it's 4 times 20 years. The first 20 years in your life, you prepare for the next 20. You get an education, you try to find out what you're going to do, have a job. You play, in Denmark, we call it father, mother and children, where you prepare to get a partner and raise a family. And when you get 60, after the first 3 periods of 20, then you can tick off, I got a partner, I raised a family, I got an education, I got a job. All the goals I've set in the first 20 years I've reached. Now I have not only 5 more years to live, I have 20, 25, 30 years more. What is the goal in this period? And people don't have the opportunity to consider what is the goals for this new lifespan. So what you lose is identity engagement, this important network of your colleagues. You can't live without social relations. In Denmark it is so that elderly, lonely men are in risk of death, and they have the highest rate of suicide in Denmark. So network is very important. As you know, structured daily, weekly, making a difference, experience every day that people need you. And of course, less money to live for, meaning and goals. So what you lose is not what people look most at when they're retired. They look most on all what you get. And if we are just going to say we have to prepare this new life phase, preparation is not a part of the norm today, what's normal today. But if we have to prepare, then you don't prepare very much if you just see what you get. It's because it's like a holiday. We'll just find out. We are very good at finding things out. No need planning, but you just have to look at the finances. But if you also have a look at what you lose, then it could be a very important consideration to find out what is my goal in this life phase. How do I get a new network? I can't live without a network. How do I get a good third age, a long third age where you're self-reliant, independent, and a very short fourth age, if we can decide, but some influence we at least have on how our lifestyle is. And the daily structure, how to make a difference, and the meaning with life. So the transition from working life is more difficult than people imagine, and then the story on working places are. But the main story is, you are lucky. I wish it was me. just to have leisure time for the rest of your life. Bernard Shaw said, what was he said? Something that perpetual leisure time is a good definition of hell. That when you have leisure for always, then it's a good definition of hell. So, is pre-retirement workshop a shortcut to active aging? That's one of my theses, and this is a graph made in the United States by Mary Lynch. They have made a survey where so many Americans were asked, how do you see retirement and the transition from working life to retirement? And normally it was just two phases, pre-retirement and leisure time. What the survey discovered is that now it's 4 phases. That first you have this pre-retirement phase, and they have put some years on it too, 5 years. And there is a second phase that also we don't know so much, but they call it career intermission. But a period where you relax, where you recharge, and you retool, you get new competences, because it's not only 5 years, it's a quite new life phase you're going to. So 52% take a break from working life. It surprises me that in general it's 2.5 years they have this career intermission period. And then it's not only leisure in the third phase. It is a mix of leisure and re-engagement. In this survey, they have identified 4 different roles, but we also know them. Some continue working, some enter voluntary jobs, some are semi-professional carers in the family, and some are just having a leisure time. But it's another picture than the normal, the traditional picture of what's happening after the last day on the job. First you have a career intermission, and then you have this re-engagement phase before it's all goes smoothly into leisure time. I've tried to compare it with the situation in Denmark and say, yes, maybe we're not so much aware of this career intermission, but during my workshops I have experienced that many men say, we get depressed in the first phase. And some women say, oh, it's like being in love, because we have so much freedom, we can travel, and they travel 12 times a year to Mallorca, and in the first year. So they have a period where they are like being in love, a bit insane, as it in fact is. But here in the re-engagement phase, it's not visible, so you have to be a detective to find out what's really happening among 65, 70 years in Denmark. We know that 10% of the 70+ years, they are still at the working life, they're still working places. We know that 40% of the Danish population are volunteers, 2-3 hours per week or more. And among the 65 and 70, it's not 40%, but it's around 35%. We also know, but it's not visible, that when the grandchildren are ill and sick, a lot of grandparents, they take care of the grandchildren so the parents can go to work. It's invisible. In Denmark, we have had a small survey which shows that 450,000, nearly 500,000 days where the parents should have been home, they can still go to work, and the companies, they don't have to miss their employees for so many days. So it's invisible. Also, the part of caring that people in our age take care of weaker parents. What does it mean to society that we do such a lot of semi-professional caring activities in our families? So there are a lot of activities where people 65, 70, they still contribute to society. Not only by working, but more and more by voluntary activities. Things that have value for society, and it really has value for society, all the caring activities in the families and so on. So this picture, I also think it's good to have a more precise picture of what's happening in this transition from working life. And I've come close to just give a short introduction to what's happening in my pre-retirement workshops. This is a model I use to sum up of a 2-day workshop what we have been talking about. There is another survey in Denmark where it says that people who have retired early, that 1/3 of them wants to get a new job. They want to re-enter the job market. So they might have retired for a period. I think 2.5 years, surprising to me that it's such a long period. I thought it was 3 months, half a year or so. But when they re-enter, they are not retired. Maybe it's a part-time job. But there are a lot of different activities where people contribute to the society, maybe by working, but most of them by volunteer activities and by semi-professional caring activities in families. And also startup entrepreneurs, the group where there is the biggest increase in number of entrepreneurs is 65 years in Denmark. That's surprising too.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. So if you compare what's happening after the last day of job, you start on your new life phase, you can say, now I have become an entrepreneur of the company myself. I'm a manager, I'm a secretary, I'm everything. So when you have a company, economy management is an important part. And it is too when you're retired. So me and income, do I have to have a part-time job? The pension I get, is it okay? Or do I have so much values in my house or in my apartment that I can get a loan, and that I think it's called reverse mortgage. I hope it's something like that. But you have to have a closer look on the economy system when you are starting the new lifetime. A company, the most important part of a company, that they have customers and also suppliers. A company can't exist without anything they get from and something they can give or sell to. And it's the same to a human being. So how is my network after I have missed an important part of my social relation during the working day? Make a status and find out, is it okay with family, friends, or how do I get new colleagues in the voluntary organization, for example, or wherever you go, cultural organization, life planning association, and things like that. So it's very important to have this look, and people can see, well, it's fine. Maybe we have to take care of, to find new colleagues. HR management, it's easy in this company. It's not so many to look at, but it would be nice that this company could exist for a long time. So have a look on your health habits, both the physically and mentally. And I think a lot of 60 plus, 70 plus, they are already looking at having a healthy lifestyle. It's not too late, but it's not easy to change your health habits. But it's very important, and it's a part of the important sessions as well in my workshops. Strategic planning, a buzzword among companies, and when the third and the fourth age is a period where there are a lot of bumps on the way to come, then it's important that you also prepare for the future and say that each step you take from now on should bring you closer to your life goals and all the changes ahead of you, being alone, the transition from the third to the fourth age and things like that. Have a look at that and be prepared so this company can exist for a long time. And the production management, what are you going to spend your time and your competencies with? Me and the present, which kind of activities will be the best for me? If, for example, I'm going to become a volunteer, then you have to first realize what kind of thing am I very good at? What kind of activities am I good at? What do I really enjoy, and where can my core competences be of the best value for other people in which volunteer organization? So it's not an easy match, job match you're going to look into, but it's important to see. And also learning new things and giving back. There's this expression called the experience dividend, where it's a professor, Erik Eriksen, who founded it, that, and what he means is that during our lifespan, a lot of human capital has been invested in each one of us. During our education, our work, our leisure time activities and things. And all this human capital, when you have reached my age and some of yours age, now it's time to pay back, to give some of this valuable experience back to others. A lot of you do it already to your grandchildren, of course, but you might also give it back to others outside your family. So giving back could be a part, could be a stepstone to find your way in the new life space. So, yes, I have here just a small presentation of some of the results. Since 2008, I have run a lot of workshops, mostly 2 days, some on 1 day, and the evaluation schemes I have used during all this period shows almost the same results. That 90 to 95% feel they are better prepared and they are satisfied with having 2 days. An important part of the workshop is that I organize people in a comfort zone, just 4 people around the table. So they get very close and they are open-minded to share some of their private images and thoughts about retirement and things like that. So it's an important part to organize it in a way that they feel safe and comfort in a smaller groups. 65%, surprising part, changed their plans just after 2 days, speaking with other people and coming around some of these themes I just mentioned. And 1/3 decide to stay longer on the job. Now we have looked into the window of a new life phase. We say, okay, it's fine enough to stay 1 more year or 2 on the job, so they decide to stay longer. 40% decide to improve their health habits. You don't have to go on a workshop for 2 days to decide to improve your health habits. The difficult thing is to do it, in fact. But they make a contract with themselves and with their partners that now we're going to do something realistic about it. And what I think is very fine too, 45% decide to contribute as volunteer. They see the volunteer world as an alternative platform where you can get new colleagues, where you can have personal development, where you can use your competences for the benefit of yourself and for the benefit of other people. So I might say, I think it is a kind of a shortcut to an active health, and in 2012 it was awarded by the... If you want to have a closer look on this, you can find this report made in 2012. I was the coordinator of a European partnership, and we finished the partnership with this report. You can find it on my homepage, and download it from there on the English side. So I'm close to the end, and just to sum up, we've got a new life phase, 20 years life bonus. This is one question we might discuss, but I have made some free questions as Karen asked me to do. So how can you find your own fate in this phase? No, what I think is important with this picture is that we are very good at doing what other people do. We are good to follow the norm. And it also needs a lot of encourage to find your own way, to leave the norm, to leave what people... it is so that when you're on a working place where it's the norm that you leave the job at 65 years, then most people leave the job at 65 years. If it's the culture and the norm in another workplace that you leave at 60 years, then most people leave at 60 years. They follow the norm. So it's difficult to find your own way. And I think the words of Bronnie Ware, a nurse from Australia who had been speaking with dying people for 8 years, she written a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And the top one is, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. But you have to be very close to the final deadline to realize that you might have chosen this way instead of just following the norm. So I think it was what I, 30 minutes or more, should demonstrate about this. So these questions are made. What is the relevant question if pre-retirement workshops are the right answer as a shortcut to active aging? What I mean with this is, it's my experience that so many people are very happy to have the opportunity for discussing with other people for 2 days. Look into what's happening in the new lifespan after the last day on the job. And they get out of this much more prepared. So I say, how come that this isn't an offer to everyone? How come that it's not obligatorisk?
Obligatory.
It's what?
Obligatory, it's the same.
Yes, obligatory, yes. So it could be one question we could discuss. How can we promote and market a new and more realistic story on the difficult transition from working life? When you're in a working place, the story is that it's just, you're lucky to stop. I wish it was me. It's just fine to have leisure time for the rest of your life. How can we market and inform about a more realistic story, which could make more people interested in having an open discussion about this very difficult life transition? And this is a long one. But how can we demonstrate to the Minister of Finance in England and in Denmark that the valuable contributions seniors as volunteers deliver every day can be an alternative to the index-regulated increase of the pension age? Yesterday I heard John Creedland, an independent reviewer of state age pension at the ILC conference. And he said the same thing as they say in Denmark, the consultants for the finance ministers, that it's necessary that elderly people have longer working lives because they have to contribute for many more years now as they also live longer. And the only way John Creedland and similar advisors and finance ministers can see is you can only contribute by working longer. Full-time working life when you're 68, when you're 70, when you're 75. John Creedland was aware that not all workers can contribute as a full-time worker. He said that too. But this part, what would happen if the finance ministers can see that 1/3 to half of the population, 60 plus, 70 plus, they in fact contribute in other ways by caring activities, by volunteer activities, by things. How much does this supply the finances in the state box to?